All right, welcome back to our conversations about, I guess, did I say this in the first one, our Stetson stories? I'm not sure if I'm going to title that as such, but as I shared before, I am recording this as of the last week of March in 2023 because I'm not sure how I'm going to roll these out, but I'm being obedient to divine download. I'm going to read this. It's not a quote. Like I have this calendar from Marshawn Evans Daniels from the Believe Bigger. It's a collection because she has a book, a devotional, a calendar, and she also has a private community of women called the Destiny Collective, where she talks about, all of destiny and believing bigger. And one on here as of today, so it's March 25th today, and this is literally what it says. I didn't turn it on, I didn't flip it over until like a few minutes before I came on here to record. It says, Lord, help me to shed all the negative beliefs and faulty thoughts about myself. I declare that I am who you say I am, regardless of what anyone else says or thinks, and regardless of my past. I am capable, I am wonderful, I am chosen in Jesus' name. Amen. And what I've been having this, I don't know if it's a game, a test, I don't know, but I have some thoughts and I'm like, all right, God, help me. Let me know that you're still there because sometimes, life is lifing. And I know in the grand scheme of things you're there, but do you actually hear me? And it's moments like this when he will send a word somehow, some way. Now, this was on my desk all morning while I did my devotion and everything, but I guess he had to talk to me about something else so I can jumpstart and do this series. And then I'm about to talk about something, and I guess this was a let me know I'm on the right track. So if you're new, I've been just going back, being obedient to the Holy Spirit. You don't have to believe in God to listen to me, but that's just how I am, believe in the Father, Son, and Holy Ghost. And I was like, gosh, I don't want to do this. And I know in the world of transformational coaching, one of my coaches says, he says, the thing that you don't want to do, or the thing that feels the hardest to you, that's the thing that you need to do. So I don't have any script about what I'm talking about. Some of these topics, again, some life lessons may show up, but it's just something that I want to share. And I don't know, maybe you're in academia, maybe you're going through something professionally, but I'm just talking about things looking back on what happened back then and how it's showing up now. And I know for me, sometimes it has been a challenge for me to be vulnerable in this world of transformational coaching. You don't have to be that vulnerable to teach anybody anything or to really coach them. You can, because I've coached people on business systems and putting things together, and I don't have to be vulnerable about that. I'm just like, this is what it is, and we can have a chat, and I can talk to you about why you may not have systems in place or why you're resisting it, but it doesn't require me to be vulnerable, really. But if you want to transform, and this is how like my coaches have taught me, and from my own immersive experience with coaching or deep transformational work, if you want somebody else to go, the leader has to go first. And my coaches, like when we're in our sessions together or when we're at retreats, they share some real things, like in the moment things. They're not digging up, oh, well, let me use that example I had back in 2018 or not even, no, let me say, they don't go like 2003 or 1999. Like sometimes those come up, but when it's talking about like exercises for us to work through things, they bring up things that they're currently dealing with, like when we're in this safe space. So I've learned to do that, learning to do that. And I was like, well, what has stopped me from doing that? Not like sharing all your business. So let's get that clear. Being vulnerable is not sharing all your business, because one of my other coaches says, use wisdom. And that's just it. Use wisdom anyway. Grandma and mommy taught me that. So it wasn't even about coaches, but I said the coach because I liked the way that she put it. It was like, you don't talk about a battle that you're still fighting. And another coach, the same one, who said about, well, now I just keep saying my coaches, because then if I say this one said, that one said, another one of my coaches, it's like, you just don't bleed in the water or don't bleed on stage. This is not your therapy time when you're working with someone else. You go do your own work first, and then you can come back and and transform lives and lead others. But if you're going through something and you're on somebody's stage, or you're in a coaching session, you don't bleed everywhere, because one, the sharks will come, and two, it's just not a good look. So get your own healing. Now, once you're standing on top of your story, then you can talk about it. And I shared in one video somewhere way back where I was in a workshop and I bled in the training about some of the things that happened at when I was working at the university, and I'm grateful that the people, my content was still strong and they got something out of it, but they actually wrote that in the comments. And I was grateful for that, because now I'm like, oh, I have an example of what it means to stand on top of my story and versus in my story. So that first year I was in my story. And I'll get to that somewhere in this series. And then when I work with them again, I could tell I was on top of my story. And someone who went to both, they could see that transformation. So the reason why I led with that quote and talking about vulnerability is because I found myself really closed up and not wanting to share. And I was trying to do better, because I remember going through my doctoral program, which was an experience in itself, where some of my professors were like, you don't talk with your cohort, you're not friendly with them. And I was like, duh, for obvious reasons. They think I'm in competition, or they didn't think I should belong there. And they didn't understand, or they didn't know how smart I actually was, and yeah, I'm bragging for a minute, because if I don't brag on me, who else? But it's not in that arrogant type of way, although there are times where I do use it to be that way if necessary. Um, but I remember it was just like, I was telling her, I was like, you don't know the conversations that are had when we're not in the presence of faculty, or some sly remarks that come across. So that caused me to like tighten up. And plus it was like I was going through something in my life where I just didn't care about your cat and what you did on the weekend. I got real life and I'm trying to get out of here. Like, I'm literally fighting for my life, so I don't have the luxury of just, eh, you know. The other thing about, so I was like, okay, fine, lesson learned. I thought I heard something. That's why I was pausing. Lesson learned. I was like, all right, let me open up, let me connect more, because I've actually heard that all throughout my professional career. But what I don't think people get was like, and you can't see me now, but again, going back, look at some of my videos, I have a younger looking face, and I'm not that tall. I'm 5'1 1/4. And yeah, I wear heels and stuff, but I'm not that tall. So even when I was teaching okay, my first internship when I was still in college, 20 years old. I don't even think I was 21. Oh, no, I wasn't 21. I was 20 years old. My internship was in a high school. So my first time like teaching was in a high school and with 10th and 11th graders. Okay. And you do the math. You know how old you were, about 10th and 11th grade. So that's where I was. So it's always been about, hey, you don't blend in. You are not their friend. You have to have this guard, especially this was also around the time when all the teachers were sleeping with kids. It was like every other week when I was in undergrad, there was a story breaking. So all of these principals were already on edge about hiring young women to teach. But anyway, so all of that's been with me throughout my professional career. And, don't be too friendly with the kids, because then, they want to be your friend and they tell you all your problems. It was just so much. So it was like, look, guard. So I've always been guarded in that sense. So I was like, all right, I'm older now. I'm going to college with the kids to be a professor. I can let down my guard. Let me be more approachable. And, all in the back of my mind, it's like, don't be the angry Black female, so it's like all of this you're carrying to the institution, where they expect for you to just shut all that off and just, okay, now you're a professor, act like this. And it's like, And especially if you're not dealing with some of those things along the way, and this is, I guess, this is a lesson I could tell anyone: deal with certain things that you might not think, like microaggressions, you might not think you need to address them, but they go into your subconscious. And I think the sooner you acknowledge what it is and deal with it, however you may need to deal with it, then you're better off versus just suppressing it. All right. So anyway, I get into there. I think this is still 2016ish. That semester was something, huh? And I'm thinking about, I'm teaching this class where I came there to teach mathematics and things adjacent to mathematics. And then they got me into this class where I think it was like Foundations of Education or something I just did not want to teach. One of those gen ed courses. And I'm teaching it. And this is what I hated about, I've always hated this about college and the syllabus, to where it's 16 weeks out. As a student, you're kind of like, okay, at least I know where I'm going. But even as a student, it's like, did you really do all of your work the full 16 weeks out? You know, if you were good, yeah, you scanned over, but maybe like if you're really good, you kind of looked up a few weeks ahead. But I don't know anybody who did all the work for all 16 weeks ahead of time. So then when I was a K-12 educator, I was like, we do glance at we think in 9-week terms, or our semesters are it could be like 18 weeks or units. We can think big picture about, I know where I'm going by the end of this chunk of time, but I'm only planning out my lessons 2 weeks, maybe 3 weeks ahead of time, because I don't want to get too far ahead of the students in case I have to adjust. That's what good teachers do. I know there are some teachers who just plan as soon as they walk into the classroom, but I'm not even going to go there. But at least a good solid 2 weeks, I used to plan. Like, I know what questions I'm going to ask. I know what problems I'm going to do. I know what exams I'm going to give the kids. Now, this is when I was teaching sixth grade. You know, I had them on a schedule like that. And then when I got really good, I could and know the kids and know where the hangups were going to be. I could plan further ahead without having to go redo my plan. So I was like, I like that version versus when I had to plan for college. You want me to plan out all 16 weeks and know every single thing? So I did that for, like, I think my first semester in one of the classes, but it was a headache because when I get in teacher mode and it's planned, I said what I said. This is what we're going to do. So catch up, right? So then I was like, okay, take it back. You know, you've done this before. Come on now. And I would go and say, all right, kids, I'm just going to put this shell on paper, but things are subject to change. And we'll just take these 2 or 3 weeks at a time. I thought I was bonding with the kids and being open and telling them. And I really remember sharing, like, hey, y'all, this is a new class for me, or this is my first year teaching college, but I'm not new to teaching. So just give me some grace and things like that. And some students were appreciative, or I thought they were, until those evaluations came out that first semester. And I got ripped up. Like, she doesn't know what she's doing. She's unorganized. You know, she's like, what kind of person y'all brought us here? She doesn't even know what she's doing. And I thought about like going to open up those archives to read them to you verbatim, but I don't think I'm ready yet. I don't think I'm ready. You know, even with this transformational work that I've done, I don't know if I want to take myself back there. So I'm just paraphrasing some things because obviously I remember. And if you can see my face right now. But I remember them saying that, and it was a literal gut punch. And you can kind of hear it in my voice because I haven't talked so much about this, and it's taking me back. So I'm doing the best I can to stay here with you. But I remember, like, oh man, it's not that I tried to be one of them, but I know how challenging college can be. And I also know how strict and hard I can be as an educator. So I was kind of trying to save them from me and then still like give them some grace, and because I'm trying to be open, I'm trying to be vulnerable. And I remember my chair at the time was like, nope, you can't do that. Unfortunately, they don't understand that. And my chair at the time, he he was a saving grace as well because he understood K-12 world. I believe he went as high as being a superintendent of a county, and not superintendent, he was like second in command, but he had taught and everything before he became a college professor. So he knew that world. And when I talked to him, he understood, and he was like, probably other institution students would accept that, but not here. And I was like, okay, say say less. I don't think that was a saying back then, but it fits. Like, all right, say less. So needless to say, vulnerability went out the door. And I think I kept that shell up from my first semester all the way until quote unquote our separation. And I just then, so when I became Dr. Glenn White for real, I was like, oh, this is what we're doing. And I think I was like in this daze of, I was in a twilight zone for like probably the first 3 semesters, like still trying to figure it out, fit in, not fit in, plan, not plan, and things like that. And I remember the either it was still that it was the same year. It was all my first year, but I don't remember if it was the 2016 semester or the fall 2017 semester where I was in the math class and I had the syllabus laid out, trying, telling the students like, all right, I'm going to change up something. No. I was like, all right, normally I would have planned out 2 weeks ahead. And I tried it again with this math ed class. So it's the math education, teaching them how to teach math. And another student was like, could you just tell us already? Because I don't work well. I don't operate that well if I don't know what's coming up. And I was like, don't act. And I said this, I was like, don't act like you're going to do all this work ahead of time. You want me to just put it out there like you're going to do it ahead of time. I was like, all right, fine. So I remember I went home, scratched out all the stuff, and made myself plan the entire semester. And I was like, before I get this over, I am not deviating one bit. So catch up. And those kids had a hard time because I did not budge. I was like, you can't have it both ways. I don't accept late work. If I got to plan ahead of time, you plan ahead of time. And I became that professor. And because I tried. I tried, and I was like, I know how college works. All of you aren't good students. And this was no dig at them, but come on now. I remember what it was like. You especially like the type of students I had, they were hyper highly involved with extracurricular activity. So they weren't just the ones to only go to school. So I was like, come on now. I don't let this mathematics and engineering background fool you. Like I was in I was like, I pledged in the sorority. I was on this step team. I laid it down for them. So I was like, oh, I'm smart and social. And it's like it's like I was always constantly trying to prove myself to these kids, and then like let them know I'm not that far removed from y'all. So like don't try to play this game on me. And yeah, I had to come out like that. I was like, so being vulnerable was out the door. And so yeah, I became that professor of like, oh, I don't want to hear nothing about no late work. I don't want to do any of that. So it was this shell all over again. And so again, evaluations came out, they ripped me again. And I was like, oh man. So at that time I couldn't tell if they were it was like it was a blur. Couldn't quite call it racism. Looking back on it, it was definitely racial. But then some of it, I was like, well, some of it was like how I was showing up. And I was like, I have no problem readjusting, but if people are going to correct me or even criticize, I need a focal point, like pinpoint something so I know if it's something that I can change, I actually will. Or if it's something that I did and I meant to do it, I'm owning up to it. But things that are like blanket or general, it's like I got no control over it unless you tell me. So I went through that, and if you hear the squeaking, it's my chair. So don't be thinking like, oh, what's she doing? She she got a problem. So I those three semesters were rough. I'm still trying to learn. First of all, I'm still owning that I'm doctor. So even though I graduated in 2015, and I had this year, this phase of not working, not having a job, and I finally got one. So I'm still kind of like owning doctor, this title, because after the hell I went through to get it, it was just like, oh, well, it's just another degree I have, you know? That's literally how I felt for a very long time. And then coming to this role as a college professor, and then where I was a professor. Now, let me give you a little bit of history of the school. I won't go into too much detail. The school was founded in 1883, and it was I think it was a Southern Bible college. So you can imagine what type of person went there for the Southern Bible College at this private liberal arts university. And so, and so not only were the Confederate flags there in the 2016, where the president's house is supposed to be, it looks like a plantation house. I promise you the campus was a plantation. Can't nobody tell me anything different. And the all of the presidents or the head of the schools that were there, white man, 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 white man. And I think when I got there, I had the first female president, but she was white, but she was a female. So you can literally see the pictures on the wall, like because you know they have the history of the presidents, white man, white man, white man, white man, white man, white man, and older white man, older white man, white man. Okay, the man. So look it up. Anyway, so I just want to give you that background, and people are like it's not always race, and Ivy Tower it is race. It's race and gender. So if you have not been there, you can't say anything about it. And plus, this is my experience. So anyway, so I'm working on okay, it's what can I change? Because when I tell you those evaluations used to be so bad, I'm trying not to go there, you all. I'm trying to stay with you. My body, I would literally break down and have these states of depression over. I didn't know it was depression back then, but it would take me a long time. And of course, those came at the end of the semester. So can you imagine how I was feeling like around December and trying to go into the holidays and then feeling that, then trying to pick myself back up, then start the next semester in January and trying to do so much, you know, because you're still living on those evaluations, even if these aren't the students. Like sometimes I did have back to back cohorts, but taking different classes. But sometimes it's like, you're hearing stuff from students that you're not going to have anymore, but you're trying to please them and they're already gone. And then you go through the whole semester again, and then you get gut punched again. Then it's the summer. Then all of your friends and family want to have summer vacation, and you can't because it's just some people were able to disassociate. But when it started turning personal, that was a hard thing to do. So I remember it was this lady there, and I liked her. I think she also had a K-12 background, you know, and then transitioned to being a college professor. And she was really nice. She gave me like her portfolio to look at because we had to do these things and document like our progress and things like that. If we're on a tenure track meaning that to get a promotion, tenure promotion. So I started off as an I was about to say president or principal, assistant professor. And then it's about 5 or 6 years, I could be promoted to associate professor with tenure, meaning I could never be fired unless I do something inappropriate to children. But it will still take a lot for me to get fired. So you will have a job for life. Essentially, that's what it was. And it's a covenant position. Like everybody want to be on the tenure track. Well, a lot of people do, not everybody. And looking back, I got to come in tenure. Don't put me on no track. Let me just be a regular professor if I chose to go back, or you bring me in as tenure with time served. Okay. But I remember following her lead. I was like, okay. And I talked with her and again, this could have been my out. I was missing signs, y'all. It was, it was as if like, I would tell people, if you're going to go get your PhD, there are only two times you can quit. After your first year, it's like, this is not for you. And then after your comprehensive exam. So after comps, you need to be out. But if you're going to go past your first year and stay, then you might as well stick it out to comps. If you make it to comps and pass, and you decide to stay, then you just tough it out and let them beat you through the dissertation phase. I'm laughing now, but that's just kind of what it is. Like, don't give up after comps. Like, go ahead and finish. But that's why a lot of people are ABB because they didn't take my advice. Well, you know what I'm saying. So, and ABD all but dissertation. And for the record, don't put that on your resume. Like, that's not cute. I know some people who be like, oh, ABD, that just means that you're not a finisher. But anyway, notice, well, hey, I say what I said. All right. So I remember I was like, all right, show me what I'm supposed to do. And I did my portfolio and I modeled my portfolio after hers. Department ripped that thing to shreds. And I was sitting there like, now y'all just let this lady pass. And I followed her because they would always say, find somebody to do. Let me do it on your own. So I went for help. I went for help. And it was still not good enough. And I was like, okay. So obviously I wasn't gonna leave because I was like, I don't know what else to do. And around this time is when I got into transformational coaching. I mean, transformational work, not coaching yet. Just I was in this business coaching because I was like, well, I'm gonna start my business and go full in my consulting business. So I can get away from y'all crazies at this institution. I think I could be an entrepreneur. Maybe that's what I'm supposed to do. But then insecurities and things start coming up and I dropped out of that. Maybe that's not what I'm supposed to do. And I had to work on some other things. And so long story short for that, I went to this retreat and Turks and Caicos changed my life that summer. I released a lot, released what happened with my mom, grieving that, letting that stuff come up. I had to heal from that, heal some relations between my sister and I, my grandmother and I. They weren't there, so I had to do the work for me. Some other things that I had never talked about to just say it and learn how to get some tools to heal from that. Didn't even touch the work stuff. So it was like, oh my gosh, I've been carrying all this stuff. And then on top of what was buried in my subconscious and down into my body, the trauma, now I'm piling on this work stuff. And it was a lot, y'all. Whew. So after that summer, and I released a lot. So it wasn't like I was quote unquote magically cured, but it was just, oh man. And I started to get back to myself. I still had work to do because, you know, me being who I am, I was like, all right, I'm done. I don't have to do anything else. That's what I'm learning now. Like, you stay in the work. You're never healed. Not saying that you are always fixing yourself, but you're staying in the work. So as things come up, you catch them sooner, quicker, faster. So it's not like you're always journaling and you're always in the space. You know, you still need to get out there and be productive and live your life, and you're not taking every moment because that can be exhausting too. Constantly being in personal growth can be exhausting if you let it. So it's like sometimes I go to the extreme. I would stay for days doing this work and then I would not do it. So I had to find what worked for me. But after that summer, going into the new school year, I became a different person. Well, actually, I became more of me. So I'm going to end that one right there. Come back for the next one. Let me know what you got out of this one. If anything, you know, I would love to hear your thoughts. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey, and I'll see you next time.